Okay, so let me describe a situation that we're all probably familiar with. You're about to go out in the town, meet some friends at a brewery, restaurant, bowling alley, wedding, wherever. And you want to look cute as hell. So you need to accessorize, which means you're going to have to grab your cutest purse. Here's mine, this adorable little crossbody sling. And then, being a board gamer, you know that you need to have a board game with you just in case. Because God forbid someone pulls out Uno. Ugh, I don't even want to think about it. But you have the perfect game. Yeah, that's the one. Okay, so let's get ready to go, and this is going to be a problem. So sometimes we need to make some sacrifices. Welcome to my channel. My name's Chance. I'm going to help you out with this problem. Sometimes we're going to need small box games where we're going. And I'm going to share with you my top 10 small box games. Now, to get things started, I need to set some ground rules for this list because there are a boatload of small box games out there on the market, and there's a lot of really good ones. So to start with, I'm not going to be mentioning any solo games. So no Food Chain Island from Button Shy here, no Lucky 7, which I've reviewed and I absolutely love. No Resist. Now this is pushing the limits of a small box game, but I love it so much that I'm counting it. Then next up, no two-player games. So that means today we're not talking about Ramlands. We're not talking about a newer one called Agent Avenue, which I absolutely love. And then no Hanamakoji in this video. And then finally, a little more arbitrary of a rule for this list, and that's going to be no trick takers on this list. So no Ghost of Christmas this time, and no Cat in the Box. Now the trick takers one, like I said, a little more arbitrary, and the reason for that is because I find trick takers to be more of a, let's say, gamer's game. They take a little more explanation, and they definitely have a little bit more skill associated with them. So those games are harder to introduce to just, random groups of people, let's say, or the non-gamers. Now, I do want to mention one, let's call it an honorable mention. I learned about Potato Man through the Brothers Murph, and I think the Potato Man is a fantastic entry-level trick-taking game that comes in a tiny little box, and I think it's really easy to teach people to play and just get up and going. I would definitely recommend that if you are looking for kind of that small box, easy to teach, kind of friendly with non-gamers trick-taking game. So yeah, with that being said, now we can get into what this top 10 list actually is, and that's going to be my top 10 small box fun games. So all of these games are going to have a decent amount of interaction. Some will be a little more gamer friendly. Other ones I think will land really well with non-gamers as well. So with that, now we can get started on this top 10 list. And before I start with number 10, I'm going to give my first, maybe runner-up, honorable mention, something. This one did not even enter into my rankings. So I used Pub Meeple for my list, and this one was not even included in the rankings because I barely considered it a game, but it's a game I love having with me. And that's going to be In Vino Morte. So this is a button shy game, which means that there's going to be 16 cards in this little envelope that I have here. And in this game, there's actually only 2 different cards. And it's just, I either have wine or I have poison. So the game is super easy, and it's basically that scene from The Princess Bride. Essentially, the person that is handed these deck of cards, they are going to deal out 1 card to every player in the game, and they must deal out at least 1 wine and at least 1 poison. And then on the player's turn, they can choose to drink, which just means reveal their card and see if they got poisoned and died, or if they drank wine and lived. Or they trade face down with another player at the table. Then play goes on to the next player. And once you get back to the dealer, everyone is going to reveal any face down cards that are left. They're going to flip them over and reveal them, and whoever got poison dies, whoever got wine lives. And you just see who lived, and the people that lived won the round. Now, I find this one, I don't keep score with this one, it's just fun to do as one-off, and we continue passing the deck around the table, and just have a good time hanging out, playing that scene from The Princess Bride. If you're playing with nerds, you're going to get a lot of quotes from that scene. I will mention that I've brought this out with a group of coworkers that do not play board games. I think I played 2 rounds with them, then I just left them with it, and I went off and taught another game to some other friends. And they played this game for, I think, over an hour. And they just had to keep people continue switching in and out, and they just kept on rotating this deck around, and they had a great time playing this game. Other things I like to do with this one are kind of change up the rules a little bit. So instead of saying that you have to deal 1 and 1 for the wine and poison, I say that you still have to deal the 1 and 1, but you must declare how many poisons you dealt out. So that gives people a little bit more deduction to play around with. So this one's fantastic because it comes in this tiny little package. You can just pull it out, play 1 round, play 6 rounds, whatever you want to do, and it obviously fits really well in this bag that I have here. Okay, so now let's move into that top 10 list. And starting with number 10. Number 10 is gonna be Love Letter. So Love Letter is a game that personally I don't actually love it, but it made it into my top 10 because when I was doing my Pub Meeple rankings, this one just kept on beating out other games. It kept showing up, and I kept remembering how much fun I had with this. This is going to be a very light social deduction game, kind of, barely. So at the beginning of the game, everyone's going to be dealt 1 card. Then on a player's turn, they draw a card, and then they play one of the other cards. And the cards are going to have various abilities. One of them's the guard, which is just have a player guess the card of another player. And essentially you're trying to eliminate everyone. So if you can eliminate everyone, you win the round. Or if everyone ends the round and the deck is empty, whoever has the highest numbered card wins the round. So really simple rules, and most of the rules are written on the card. So people that play the card can just kind of read their cards and they know what they do. Generally, once you play 1 round, everyone has a really good grasp of the game, and you can kind of just get going from there, and there's no real rules questions from there. Some cards are going to be like, compare your hand with another player, and whoever has the lowest card is out of the round. So this one, it's one of these games that it's really light, and it just brings up fun moments every time I bring it out. I really don't like playing it as the rules are written, because essentially there's going to be some favor tokens in here, and you're going to play multiple rounds to try to reduce that randomness and give everyone an opportunity to win. And after you collect a certain number of favor tokens, the game ends. But I really like just playing this as one-off rounds. Now, I will mention that there's a downside of that, because in this version of the game, there are going to be some spy cards in here, and those spy cards kind of only work if you play multiple rounds of the game. So I do recommend, if you do want to play one-off rounds, just remove those spy cards. Like, it doesn't make a huge difference, not a big deal there. And then you can kind of just have those nice one-off experiences. And once again, this is just a very light, just usually entertaining social deduction game. I would say it plays actually great from 2 to 5. I think it can play up to 7, but that 6 and 7 player count is where I feel like this game starts to fall apart, just because there's so few cards in the deck, and if you have 7 players in the game, you're gonna have like 2 or 3 turns maybe, so you don't have a lot of control of what actually happens. I think this game shines kind of at that 3 to 5 player count, and the 2-player mode is actually really good. I actually really enjoy playing this at 2 players as well. So Love Letter, I highly recommend. It's my number 10. There's a few variations out there. I haven't played most of them. I did recently play the Arkham Horror version, and I had a really good time with that one. But I would say the way the scoring works, the game maybe overstays its welcome a little bit, but it is a really well designed, and I think it was a really nice iteration of this. So if you do enjoy Love Letter, that might be another one worth checking out. But if you have not played any of the Love Letter versions, I probably would stick with this original one right here. And yeah, once again, that fits right in the bag. Another really small one. Moving on to my number 9, and that is going to be Antidote. So Antidote is another deduction game, so not social deduction this time, maybe a little bit of social deduction, but the way this game works is that there's a suit or multiple suits in the deck, and there's going to be an X card for each suit. At the beginning of the game, you're going to remove one of those X cards from the game, and that is going to represent the antidote for this round. And the goal for the players is to be left with one of the number cards of that suit. So for that suit, they want to have one of those numbers that matches that card removed from the game, because if they manage to hold on to that as their last card, they essentially drink that as the antidote and survive the round. The way this game works is that there's a few different actions. One of them is going to be trade with another player, like you can trade a card with another player to try to find information in the game. And another one is going to be pass a card, and the player gets to choose if they want to pass cards left or pass cards right, and then everyone would pass their card. And then the last, or another option is to play a card to the table. So that's kind of going to be the timer mechanism of the game. As players play cards to the table, they're going to reduce their hand size. Once everyone's down to that one card, the game is going to be over. So you're playing this deduction game where you're trying to make these strategic trades to try to narrow your option for the antidote. But also when those cards are being played to the table, one of the other things is that the person with the highest number card of the antidote is going to be the one that wins. So if you see someone, like I think the cards go 1 to 6, I believe, something like that. So if you see someone discard a 6 of a certain type, you are going to be fairly confident that they're saying that that is not the antidote, that they have information that you might not have. So you're trying to pay attention to what other players are doing. You're trying to pay attention to what trades other people are doing, so you kind of can track where certain cards are at, because the X cards that were not removed from the game are going to be in players' hands, and those ones you really want to know where they're at. So you're constantly paying attention to what trades are happening around the table. You're constantly paying attention to what people are playing on the table. So it's a really cool deduction game where players are kind of constantly engaged to try to narrow what's going on, or narrow the options in the field so they know what card to keep. And then also they're trying to make the decision of when do they need to pass cards and maybe try to hold cards from other players, and then maybe even take that shot at tricking other players. Like if you have the opportunity of playing a 6 that you know is not the antidote and you put it out there, then players have to question, like, do they know something I don't? Are they trying to trick me? Are they trying to fool me into thinking that's not the antidote? Are they holding on to like the 5 and maybe they got the 6 out of the way as just a red herring in the game or something? So I do think there's a lot of fun choices in here. I think it does a really good job of keeping players engaged and around the table. This does play 2 to 7. Never played it at 2, never played it at 3, but that 4 to 7, I think this game is fantastic at. I have a really good time playing this at the 4 to 7 player count. And there's some variation in this box too. There are some other modules in here that I haven't really got to play around with too much because I'm usually just playing the base game. It's a little easier to teach, a little easier to get going, and like I said, usually playing one-off rounds of this one. But if you do play it enough, what's really cool is that there is an expansion on this, which will actually increase the player count up to 9. I think there's like a teams mode in here. There's some other stuff with like a lab romances, which I think there might be something in the base box with lab romances, and that gives players kind of some other objectives. They have to be like, oh, you want the person on your left to survive because you're in a romantic relationship with them. Basically kind of go into the grad school romance stuff. So I think they're a really cool theme, really cool concept. I really enjoy deduction games, and I really enjoy that players are kind of constantly engaged on other players' turns to try to keep track of the information at the table. So Antidote, that's going to be my number 9. And I mentioned the expansion, but like I said, I can't really recommend the expansion because I haven't really actually explored the expansion at all. I think the base game's good enough as it is. So let's move on to my number 8. This is going to be one that I don't actually own yet. And that's because I have 2 friends that own it, so I know I can play it whenever I want. Well, as long as I can convince them to bring it. But that number 8 is going to be Knarr. Now, this is kind of an interesting one for me because I would say this is the least interactive game on my list. This one falls into almost more of a Euro category for a small box game. That's because there is going to be a bit of open drafting, but you have essentially a race to get to, I believe it's 60 points around this track on the board. And your goal is basically to collect these sets of cards, and they're gonna be these Vikings. You're gonna play those Vikings into your tableau, and as you play certain sets, that set will get more powerful as you build it up. So maybe you're going heavy on red cards and just trying to make that red card action more and more powerful. But then there's location cards that you're also going to be trying to add to your, let's say, control, your territories. And you have to spend your Viking cards to add those territory cards. So basically you're going to be building up your engine of Vikings, and then you're going to tear it down just to get one of those location cards. Because those can be worth a lot of points, and they also build up your kind of, let's say, your trade path or something. It's this thing at the top of your board, which if you get the right symbols, you can activate one of your Viking routes or whatever. So those location cards can be more powerful than those Vikings. So you have to deal with this tempo of recruiting these cards from the open drafting field, and when you turn them in to gain those locations. And it really has kind of the Euro interaction, where it's kind of like you might take something that someone else needs. You might get to a location card that someone else is also going for. So there's no real direct take that, but it is kind of that everything's just that race mechanism. Race to get the draft, the Viking draft cards, race to get the location cards, race to the 60 points. So all of those things to me land in just Euro resource management. But because this game is so short, so quick, and so snappy, like I love playing it. I like bringing it out and just playing this game. It gives me kind of to me, it gives me everything I really want out of a Euro game, but in a much shorter experience. And so yeah, Knarr is fantastic. I think 2 to 4 players, it plays really well. Unfortunately, it doesn't go to the higher player counts, but if you're looking for something where you can kind of just chill, be a little more heads down, not as interact with other players, and just work on your kind of own little efficiency engine, I think Knarr is a fantastic small box game to have with you. Okay, so let's move on to number 7. This is one I recently did a full review of, and that is Courtisans. So Courtisans is one that just kind of rocketed up my list, and that's because of its simplicity and just how much fun every turn is. So in this game, players are going to be dealt a hand of 3 cards, and then on their turn, they have to play those 3 cards, and then at the end of the turn, they're going to draw 3 again. So they have to take one of their cards, play it to their tableau, another card, and play it to another person's tableau, and then one of their other cards and play it to the queen's table. Now the queen's table is where all the kind of scoring criteria is going to be set. So basically, you can place cards above or below the queen's table. And for each family, which is the suits, if there's more cards above the table than below, they're going to score +1 point per card in your tableau at the end of the game, and then more cards below than above, -1 point per card in your tableau at the end of the game. So basically you're trying to collect cards that you think are going to be scoring those positive points by the end of the game, but you're only going to be able to play 1 card to your tableau and 1 card to the queen's table per round, and then you play that 3rd card to someone else's tableau, which is kind of cool because you kind of get to there's 2 things you can do with this. You can either try to dump negative points on someone knowing that this family is doing terrible, so you can just give them those negative points, or you can potentially recruit someone to your side. Like maybe you're trying to get the red family to be exalted in that positive point space. So you start giving someone else some red cards and be like, oh, you want them to be positive too, right? So I think there's a lot of just really, it's a really fast game. It's really simple decision space, but every time I get those 3 cards, each one of those decisions, which one I'm keeping my tableau, which one's going to the queen's table, and which one's going to a friend, like I love that every single time I have my turn in this game. And the turns are relatively snappy. There's a couple other things that really make this game stand out, and that's going to be there's 4 different powers that cards can have in the game. So there's basic cards and 4 different other powers. And all of them are pretty simple, but all pretty consequential in the game, so I think that's really cool. And then finally, there's some goal cards. So everyone's going to get 2 goal cards at the beginning of the game, which is going to give you a bit of an asymmetric value for the families. So players are going to have different objectives that they're going for, which is going to change your kind of your placement strategy, and not everyone's going to be going for the same exact families to be in that positive scoring position, which I think it adds some more dynamic and tactical decision making to this game. So this one, also in the full review, I called out that there's 2 playstyles I've seen kind of emerge out of this one. There's kind of like the justice group, which they look around the table and they say, oh, who has the most negative points, or who's the most in the lead, so I'll give them a negative point to try to even the playing field, and you're constantly calling people back to that 0 point in the game. And then there's also the play group that just kind of they decide to just dump on someone. It's like, oh, here's a red card for this person, and we know red's scoring negative. Then the next player's like, oh, they gave you a red card, so here's another red card. And then the third person's like, well, everyone's giving you a red card, so here's another red card. And then that one person's just getting buried in this hole. And I think that the social interaction, the dynamics in this game that come up are always enjoyable, because while there is a little bit of take that in there, the game is quick, it feels light, it doesn't feel hurtful when I play it, so I definitely recommend Courtisans. That's my number 7. Okay, moving on to my number 6, and that will be Trio. So Trio is also known as Nana, and this is a game where players are going to be dealt a hand of cards, and then there's also going to be some leftover cards flipped face down on the center of the table, and you're going to have to order your cards in ascending order. And then on a player's turn, their goal is to find a trio, but they must find a pair first. If they don't find a pair, they don't get the opportunity to search for that trio. So when you are searching for a card, you can either ask someone to show their lowest card, their highest card, or you can flip one on the center of the table. So maybe you ask player number 1, show me your lowest card. They show you a 2. Player number 3, show me your lowest card, and they show you a 1. Turn's over because you didn't find a pair. But if they showed you a 2, now you found a pair. Now you get the shot to find that third card. So maybe you're going to ask player 1 again to show their next lowest card. Or you go to that center table and flip up a card to try to find that 2. If you find that trio, then you get to keep that as a potential scoring pile. But if you don't, then it just goes on to the next player. Everyone takes the cards back to the hand. That center card flips down. So this means that it is a light memory game. So players are trying to pay attention to what cards are being revealed on other people's turns so they can keep track of where these cards are at, because they might need those cards. They might need to know what cards are blocking potential cards from being revealed. Because maybe you have a 4, but you know that this person over here just revealed a 2, so they could still have the 4, but they need to get rid of that 2 first so you can get to that 4 if they potentially have it in their hand. So you're trying to make a little bit of a deduction on where the cards could be, but also just trying to memorize what cards have been revealed from each person's hand. And the hardest part is that center table, when a card gets flipped over and then it's like 3 turns later and you're trying to remember what was in that spot. Oh man, it's like, oh, I know I saw the card I need, I just don't remember where it is. So this one is another really light one, plays 3 to 6 players. I think it plays great at all player counts. I would play it at all player counts. I absolutely love it. I think the memory element is really cool. And the fact that because there's that memory element, all players are constantly engaged at the table makes this one stand out for me. So that is my number 6 trio. Okay, so on to number 5. This is another game that I don't own yet, but I plan on adding it to my collection because I absolutely loved it the first time I played it, and I'm like, yeah, I 100% need this in my collection. That's going to be Ito, or Ito, or ITO, whatever it's called. This is a game that I think one of my friends described it as a mashup of fun facts with the mind. And then you got Ito. So in Ito, players are going to be dealt these cards. The cards are numbered, I think, 0 or maybe 1 to 100. And each player gets 1 card. And then there's going to be a kind of question or a prompt flipped over. And the prompt might be something like, describe a planet that you would want to visit. So now the game is it's a co-op game where players are trying to put their number cards in order. But the way they do that is they describe something matching that prompt where their planet would land. So maybe if someone has number 100, they're going to describe paradise. They're going to be like, this is the greatest planet ever. You have everything you want. You're never going to die. Like, it's the best place ever that you definitely want to visit. So that's card number 100. So they're going to slide their card into the furthest spot to say that this is the best planet, the highest numbered card that I think is in the game. Then maybe number 0 is like, okay, that's the worst planet ever. You die immediately if you visit here. You definitely don't want to go here. So that person will put their card down at the end of the row and be like, this is a very low card. But where the game becomes interesting is when someone has like, what does a 30 planet look like? Or what does a 62 planet look like? Or if you don't have the great spread on that one, like maybe one player has a 62 and the other one has a 67, like how do you know who's describing the planet that lands in those 2 spots? So I really enjoy this one because, one, this is a co-op kind of word story game kind of thing, which I like a lot more than something like Just One. Because in Just One, you have one player that the spotlight is kind of on them. They're on the spot to try to parse out what the clues are that were given to them. And I feel like there's a lot of games that do that. And Wavelength is another one, and So Clover, like there's always these games that kind of have the spotlight on one person and then everyone else is on the team. With Ito, I love the fact that everyone is participating in the same exact game, doing the same exact thing, and trying to rate the cards together. So Ito just does a phenomenal job of keeping players engaged. No one has the spotlight on them, and you all get to kind of participate in this. And I find it just a little easier for people to relax in this game than some of those other kind of lighter word games. And once again with Ito, you can just play 1 round, you can play 2 rounds, you can play 7 rounds, or however many you want. It doesn't really matter. It's just the experience is what's enjoyable with Ito. Okay, so let's move on to my number 4. Number 4, I learned about from So Very Wrong About Games. They talked about it so many times in their podcast that I finally just said, fine, I'm gonna buy it. It costs like 12 bucks, so I'm gonna give it a shot and just see what they're talking about here. That is gonna be Paku Paku. So I knew Paku Paku was gonna be fun immediately when I opened the box because, well, when I shook the package, because it makes this noise. Like, anything that makes that noise, you know you're in for a good time. So Paku Paku is a real-time dice rolling dexterity game. So at the start of the game, everyone's going to get a die, maybe a different number of die, but it depends on player count and how the die are distributed. But generally, let's say you start with 1 die in front of you. Then you're going to say Paku Paku go or something, and then you start rolling those die. If you roll a number face during this phase, it doesn't mean anything, it just means you have to roll again. If you roll a green panda face, great, you get to pass your die to your neighbor. And then if you roll the red face, which is a dish, you have to take one of these plastic dishes and you have to stack it in the center of the game board. And those dishes will stack up higher and higher. And the way the round ends is if someone has a certain number of dice in front of them. So at 5 players, I think it's like once one player has 4 dice in front of them, someone can yell Paku stop. Or if someone knocks over any of the dishes in that center dish stack, and then someone can yell Paku stop. And then that player that lost the round, they take all the dice, they roll them, and this is where the numbers matter. They will gain points equal to the numbers that they roll on the dice. And then the first player to 10 points loses, and then the player with the least number of points wins the round. And I love everything about this. the dice roll, the real-time dice rolling is great because you'll be sitting there rolling and you'll end up with a pile of dice. You'll get to like that 3 dice and you'll be like trying to just roll as fast as you can to get those green pandas, get those dice out of there. Then maybe you get all the dice out of there and you get a little bit of a lull. You get to take a little bit of a breather while you laugh at someone else at the table. You see them struggling with the dice. Then all of a sudden there's a flood of dice coming at you and you're like, oh no! And you're trying to figure out how to roll dice faster and faster just to get rid of them. So that real-time dice component is fantastic. And then that dexterity, that little stacking element in this. So these dishes are designed absolutely perfectly. They're super smooth and rounded. So as you stack them up, they start to tilt a little bit. They start to wobble a little bit more. So as it gets higher and higher, this tower just gets more and more crazy and it gets harder and harder to stack a dish on there. So both of those elements, that pushing for the end of the round, I think are done so incredibly well, and it has that just enough tension and just enough enjoyment where I really enjoy this game. And then finally that last part where the loser takes all the dice and rolls them and they get points equal to what they rolled. It brings up this final shot where there's this random chance once again for them to potentially get no points. I've seen someone roll the dice and then they get no numbers and it's like, hey, look at that. Nothing bad happened. One person will roll them and they'll get like 6 on one roll and it's like, what? Like, what just happened here? So this one is just chaotic. It is just enjoyable. People are generally tend to be smiling while playing this. There's going to be some people that just aren't going to enjoy Paku Paku, you know, there's some people that just cannot stand anything real time. They just don't want to deal with it. They don't want to deal with the stress of it or anything. But I feel like this game, it's just light and fun and enjoyable. It plays 2 to 8. I think I played it 2 to 6 so far. I'd be more than happy to play this at 8. I think it'd just be a little difficult to get 8 people around the same table to be able to reach that center point. But yeah, 2 to 6, I've had an absolute blast with Paku Paku and cannot recommend it enough if you want a little real-time dice rolling game. Okay, so on to my number 3. And that is going to be Skull. So Skull is a pure bluffing game. Some people describe it as taking poker and getting rid of the cards and the card counting and just keeping the bluffing. So to start a round of Skull, everyone has 4 coasters. They have 3 flowers and 1 skull. And at the beginning of the round, everyone's going to place 1 coaster on their player board face down. And then the round's going to start, and the player starting the round, they have the choice of making a bid or placing another one of their coasters. Now, a bid means that they're trying to state how many flowers they think they can find during the round. So they're essentially going to either place another coaster or make that bid. And usually players will, let's say they go around the table, play some coasters, and then a player might eventually say, I'm going to bid 3. Now they're saying that I think I can find 3 flowers out on the table. And if they manage to get that bid right, if they manage to find those 3 flowers, so they tell the correct people to flip over their coasters, and you have to also flip over your own coasters when you're doing this. You actually have to start with your own, which is one of the risks in the game. But if you manage to get those flowers, you gain a point, you flip over your player forward, and you only need 1 more point to win. But if you flip over any skulls, including one of your own, you have to lose one of your coasters for the remainder of the game. So you're gonna go from 4 down to 3. And you have the possibility of losing your skull, which is super dangerous in the game. Because one of the things you can do in this game is you can bluff. You can put down your skull and then you can make a bid. You can be like, you can put down your skull, and then when it comes back to you, maybe you bid high and you bid something like 5 or whatever. And you're trying to trick someone into thinking that you put down flowers and that your stack is safe. So you might be trying to bluff them and being like, oh yeah, I definitely have flowers in my stack, because you want them to come over and check out your stack and flip over that skull so they can lose one of their coasters. Because one of the ways to win is by eliminating other players. So if they lose all their coasters, they're out of the game. So that's one of the ways skull can go down. Most of the time, I think this one, I've seen the winner just gets 2 points, and I have found that this is entertaining every time. Players are engaged, they're constantly looking at other players, trying to judge what they've done, trying to judge their poker faces and see if they can trick them into flipping over a skull or determine if they can find the flowers at the table. So I find this game really engaging. This one plays, I believe, 3 to 6 for this version. I think they have another version on a pink box that plays 3 to 7. I played it, I think 4 to 7 or 4 to 6. I don't think I've played it at the 7-player count before, but that 4 to 6 I think is a kind of a sweet spot for this game. I would actually say it probably shines best at 4 to 5. 6 gets a little crazy. 3 I think would be fine. Probably not my preference, but I think it'd be fine at 3. Now, the only downside on this one is I find that it can drag a bit, because the box says 15 to 45 minutes, and this game pushing that 45 minutes, and if you start pushing an hour in this thing, this can definitely start to drag. So while I do really love this one, I love playing it so much, and I love the bluffing, and I think I like that bidding component of this game is what stands out for me, and that's why it's in the number 3 spot. I do want to offer you an alternative that also comes in a small box that still has the bluffing. It lacks the bidding, so it doesn't have some of the interaction that I really enjoy in Skull, but plays in a more reasonable time frame on a consistent basis. That's going to be Cockroach Poker. So think of this as my secondary number 3. This is another bluffing game where essentially players are going to be you have a hand of bug cards and you're going to pass one of those bugs to a player. You're going to be like, this is a spider. And that player has to determine, are you telling the truth or telling a lie? They can try to call you out on it or confirm, but if they choose not to, they can also take a peek at the card and pass it to another player. So you could be like, oh, this is a spider. Then they can look at it and be like, oh, this is a cockroach. So the next player now has to determine who's telling the truth. Do they believe either of you? I don't know. So this one it takes out the bidding from Skull, and this one's just pure bluffing. And I find it really enjoyable, plays in a much shorter time period. But like I said, Personally, I prefer Skull because of that bidding component, but I do have some friends that prefer Cockroach Poker because it doesn't have the bidding. So those are my 2 number 3s. I kind of cheated on that one, but I wanted to kind of throw a bluffing game in my number 3. So on to number 2, and that is going to be That's Not a Hat. Now, this is a game that I barely thought was going to be a game when I first read the rules. So let's say there's going to be 4 players at the table. That means there's a total of 5 cards that are going to be out on the table. Every player has 1, and then there's going to be an extra card passing around. So, and on these cards are just going to be little kind of sketches of various objects like a toaster or a bicycle or a kite. Just some very simple sketches. And when you look at the rules, it's like, okay, so I have to remember 5 things. And that's it. It's like, I should be able to remember 5 things, right? That's like not a problem at all. Once all the cards flip face down in this game, because they all start face up until a card gets passed. But once they all flip face down, I'm going to tell you what happens. It's usually like 2 minutes into the game, and the only thing I am thinking about is what is the card that is right in front of me. I don't care about any of the other cards at the table. I just want to know what is in front of me. What did someone pass me? Is this a bicycle? Is this a pencil? What are words that I've heard? I don't know. A bird? What did someone put in front of me? I'm just trying to remember all the words that I've heard during this game and trying to figure out what could possibly still be in front of me, because I have forgotten everything. I know roughly what's out on the table, but I can't remember where anything's at. So this game will melt brains. You'll see people just break down during this and just, they will get a card passed to them and be like, oh, thank you for that card. I know what that is. Then they'll look down at their card and be like, wait, oh no. you literally, like, I've seen people's brains just kind of glitch. It's just this thing where, and I wonder to myself, it's like, is my brain broken? Like, is something wrong with me? Should I not be able to remember these cards? So I have an absolute blast with this game. The box says it plays 3 to 8. This is probably going to be better at, let's say, I'm guessing 4 and 5 are the best player counts. I think I played it at 6. But one of the issues is that the cards, they have a direction on the backside of them, which tells you what direction to pass, and sometimes that direction will switch. So sometimes at those higher player counts, you can have kind of one side of the table playing the game and the other side just kind of waiting. And a lot of times that other side of the table will just wipe themselves out and the round will end. So I do find it's probably best at kind of that 4 or 5 player count. Although it still works at the higher player count, so you can laugh at your friends for failing, and then once a card gets to you, they all laugh at you. So, but this game is one that I like playing maybe 1 to maximum of 3 rounds, because literally I think smoke starts coming out of my ears while playing this game. So that's not a hat. This one blew me away. I absolutely love it. I love teaching people this. It's a really simple game with a simple premise and seems like it should be easy. Everyone that learns it's like, oh, this seems straightforward. And then once they start playing it, like, yeah, brains just start shutting down, and it's just a phenomenal game design. So this brings me to my number 1. So the final game for my fun small game series here, and that is going to be Bohnanza. So this is a classic. I think this box right here, I think this is like the 25th anniversary edition. I think the other one of the original boxes is a little bigger, probably doesn't fit in the small box games category, but this one, this one still fits. It's a little wide, but it has this nice band on it. And also I think this has a few expansions in it, and the 25th anniversary edition plays, I think, 2 to 7 players. Now, I will just start with saying that I don't care about a lot of the expansion content in this. I do like having the cards that increase the player count, because I played this game, I think, from 4 to 7. I think at 2 and 3, I don't really see why I would choose this. Like at 2 players, I'm going to choose one of the games I mentioned earlier in this video, like Radlands or Hanam Koji or something. 3 players, I might be okay, but once again, I'd probably rather play Knarr or something at 3 players. But 4 to 7, Bohnanza, this is just absolutely phenomenal. This is one of the first, like, well-known hobbyist board games that I probably played, to be honest. This is a trading game. So you are going to be bean farmers, and at the beginning of the game, everyone's going to be dealt a hand of bean cards. And you're not allowed to change the order of those bean cards. Then you're going to have this little player mat that has some number of fields on it. I think usually 2 fields. And on your turn, you can plant one of your beans into your field as long as you have an open field. If you don't, you have to harvest your field. We'll get back to that. But you're going to plant a bean card, then you can actually plant your second one as well. If you're planting the same type of bean, they can go in the same field, because essentially it's a set collection. So the bigger the set that you have in your field, the more points you're going to score for that set. And then there's different types of beans, and they have different scoring potential. So it might be like the red bean. If you have 1 red bean, maybe that's going to be worth 1 point. But if you manage to get 3 red beans, maybe that's worth 2 points. And if you get to 4 red beans, maybe that's 3 points. So it has the scaling for the red bean. But then maybe something like, I don't know, blue beans. It's like if you have 3 red beans, it's 1 point. If you have 3 blue beans, it's worth 1 point. If you have 7 blue beans, it's worth like 2 points or something. Like, so it has different scaling, different values for the different beans, and that gives you kind of different incentives, because you're forced to plant something from your hand. And then the trading starts when, after you're doing your planting, you flip over 2 cards from the deck. And those 2 cards are now available to everyone to be traded. So people are going to start making deals with you, because you can't change the order of your cards in your hand, but you can trade from anywhere in your hand. So it could be that you have a card that you want to plant towards the end of your hand, and your goal now is to get rid of those cards early in your hand to move that card to be in that first planting position. So you're trying to figure out what does another player need that you can kind of get out of your hand just so you can kind of get your hand sequence in the way that you want it. So it has this cool hand management thing going on with the trading, with the set collection. And also through the set collection, you're going to be harvesting these fields, and then some of those beans you're going to flip over onto the coin side, put them on your player board, then you're going to discard the remainder, and those are going to go back into the game, and it's kind of, you're going to be taking beans out of the game and changing the number of beans available. So it's going to constantly kind of change the valuation of the beans that are in that draw deck over the course of the game. So just has an incredible market, has a really good mechanic with the hand order. The hand management is just a lot of fun in this, and I find that everyone is engaged when those two cards are flipped over. Once those two cards are flipped over, everyone's like, ooh, okay, what can I do? Now, some people are going to look at their hand and be like, yeah, there's nothing you want. They're going to sit out that trading round, and then there's going to be 2 or 3 other players that are like, okay, I'll give you 1 green bean for that 1 red bean. And the person's like, no, red beans are too valuable for that. I'm not taking that for 1 green bean. I'd rather keep the red bean. So then they're going to be like, okay, I'll give you 2 green beans and 1 soybean for that 1 red bean. So you kind of have that back and forth. But unlike some other trading games, I find that the trading usually goes pretty quickly because the values of the cards are easy for players to parse. Like, they're not hard to determine what the different values are going to be for players. And I find that simplicity really makes it where this trading, it doesn't drag on too long. You do get some back and forth, but the trading goes pretty quickly, and it can be pretty entertaining too. Especially if players have certain goals that they're going for, or certain personal goals that they're going for. Maybe they're saying like, I will trade anything as long as someone gives me a red bean. And so I find there's some fun dynamics. Players are engaged. It has this cool set collection. It's just a really unique game that I think it's one of the oldest games in my collection now, and I don't see myself getting rid of it. So I highly recommend giving Bohnanza a try if you haven't. So yeah, that's gonna do it for my top 10 small box fun games. These are my more interactive games, except for Knarr. Like I said, that one kind of snuck itself onto my list. But these ones tend to bring players to the table, keep players engaged, keep players talking to each other and having a good time with each other and being in each other's company. So let me know if you have any thoughts about these games. Please leave comments below. Let me know if there's games that you think I may have missed, or if there's something that you think I may enjoy that did not make this list. Unfortunately, I've already talked for way too long, and there can only be 10 games on this list, although if you paid attention, I snuck in a bunch of other games that I really like at the beginning of this video. So hopefully you got something out of this. As usual, please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.